This is a little bit of an egghead question, but I'm interested, I'm seeing you, I think most men who aren't in a flow, and we mature so late now that 25 is, you're right in the middle of it, we get very anxious if we're not in a flow. And so you leave that experience and you're approaching a flow that has carried you to age 60. You got into biography writing. Tell me about your strategy there. Did you have one, or did you just start and get good at it?
No. There is no strategy. In fact, if you had asked me at any time prior to 2006 or 7, do you think you will ever write a biography of anyone, I would have said emphatically, no. I have no ambition to ever write biographies. I thought I would be a fiction writer. I wasn't sure what I would do. I knew I wanted to be a writer, but I never had the ambition to write any biographies. I also had never had an ambition to write children's books, and I've written 30 of them. So, God, if we put our life in God's hands, He has plans for us of which we often know little or nothing. No, I was kind of like tricked by God into, sometimes He'll maneuver us, and I wrote a book. There are 3 in the series, but it's called Everything You Always Want to Know About God, But Were Afraid to Ask, which is just kind of apologetics, Q&A, some humor, but the basics of the faith.
Great stuff, yeah.
And so I wrote that, and the first one came out in 2005, and I just had a couple of paragraphs in there about William Wilberforce, because I thought if you believe the Bible, it changes everything. Wilberforce believed the Bible, became a Christian around age 26 in 1785, and it changed everything. So here he is, a politician, and he decides to give his whole life over to God, and it leads to him leading the battle for the abolition of the slave trade in the British Empire, a monumental thing
in the world,
a monumental victory in the world. It just unbelievable because he believed the Bible. So I just write a couple of paragraphs in the book about, hey, maybe it's a good idea to take the Bible seriously. Here's one example, right? Mm-hmm. I get on CNN to talk about the book, Everything You Always Want to Know About God, But Afraid to Ask, and the woman interviewing me asks me, what's this on page 88? I was not prepared. I thought she's going to ask me about angels and demons and evil and whatever. Ask me about that. So I talk a little bit about Wilberforce on CNN, which leads to a publisher approaching me and saying, hey, there's a film coming out, Amazing Grace, about the life of William Wilberforce. Would you like to write a biography to come out when the film comes out? Gotcha. And I thought, well, I know a little bit about Wilberforce because of my friend Os Guinness, because of Chuck Colson. I'll think about it. And I decided to do that. And so I write this biography, Amazing Grace, about William Wilberforce. And I realized in writing it, it kind of allowed me to, in some ways, express my literary talent in a way that I hadn't in these other books. And I enjoyed it. I love the history. So I thought maybe I would write one other biography in my life. And if I did, it would have to be about Bonhoeffer, because my mother grew up in Nazi Germany. My grandfather was killed in the war. Very personal for me what happened in Germany, because I'm German. Yeah. And so I thought about it, eventually wrote the Bonhoeffer biography. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was a very painful experience. I had to switch publishers. It was a real agony. But God miraculously spoke to me and assured me that He had His hand on the book somehow. And I didn't know what that meant. I just wanted to get it done. It ended up being 600 pages. I refused to cut it. And it became the book that blew my whole career, into existence, because it sold over 1 million copies. It was translated into 20 languages. There's a film coming out in November, not officially based on my book, but so much has followed from my writing the Bonhoeffer book. I mean, it seems obvious to me that God created me to write the Bonhoeffer book. There's no doubt about it. And that the story of Bonhoeffer led to where I am now in trying to help do what Bonhoeffer did, to wake people up about what your Christian faith requires of you, not just intellectual assent, but living out your faith. I mean, I was literally in Harlem last night in the footsteps of Bonhoeffer, right where he lived for a year. you know, in an effort to stand up for the Jews today. Bonhoeffer stood up for the Jews because of his Christian faith in the 30s. So it's one of those things where you realize God's hand was on me, steering me to write biographies. I never intended to write one. I wrote two. Then I was finally persuaded to write a biography of Martin Luther, which came out on the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, so it came out in 2017. So I don't think I will probably write any more long biographies, but my book, 7 Men, my book, 7 Women, my book, 7 More Men, these are all short biographies. God clearly intended for me to do this, but there was zero thinking on my part. God maneuvered me to do this, and it's only in retrospect that I have seen the value of it. It's not like I saw the value and I thought, well, let me write a biography or two. I just had kind of an innate sense to follow God's leading.